The year is 2021. Deltarune Chapter 2 had just come out, and it was some of the best work Toby Fox has ever put out. Everyone was dying for more Deltarune content, but unfortunately, it looked like Chapter 3 wasn't gonna come out anytime soon. Starved for content, Deltarune fans began to make their own Chapter 3. Enter Prediction AUs, the fans' version of Deltarune. And safe to say, if we were the ones making this game instead of Toby Fox, it'll be a lot worse. The thing is, I actually had one of these back in the day, in the far back year of 2023. I never actually shared it online though. However, I went through all my old art and sketchbooks in preparation for this video, and unfortunately, I only found 3 surviving pages of art from this. Luckily, I have an amazing thing called my brain, and I'm able to remember a fair bit of what I had, so we're just gonna work off of that today. Recently, after watching Redbuzz's 72's history lesson about the fandom and what it was up to after Chapter 2 came out, it made me want to go back and redesign the characters I made for this AU, with the hindsight of the real Chapter 3 we got, and breathe new life into them. So, without further ado, allow me to info dump to you on my 100% accurate predictions from back in the day. I'll start out by introducing the characters I designed for it, as well as compare them before and after this redesign, and after that I'll give a brief plot overview about my version of the chapter would have looked like. So, without further ado, let's begin with the main man, the star of the show himself. You know him, it's... Mike is the ruler of the Dreamer Dark World. They're a karaoke microphone Chris and Azrael used to play with. In my older version of the chapter, they were a big and bombastic character who did a lot of bad things, believing they were a good person, who even resorted to mind control in order to keep the denizens of their dark world obedient. So basically just a worse repeat of Queen. I'll talk about their updated personality when I get to Tenna, but first I want to discuss their design a little bit. In his original design, Mike wore a suit, but I ended up changing that because I'm gonna be honest, basically every character in this AU wore a suit at one point. Men's fashion is difficult. It was the best way I knew how to make a character look professional. I ended up changing it to be a bit more generic, but adding the shoulder pads and the thin waist to invoke Metatone vibes. They got the big iconic smile every Chapter 3 fan design had. My 2 biggest inspirations back in the day were the mic designs by Vision Crew and Neonbandit. Back then, I really liked the idea of Mike being a microphone instead of a television. It was surprisingly not done that often for a character named Mike. I also gave him an afro because, well, I think it's a cool hairstyle. Although in the remake, I made it a lot more square because I thought it was really funny. Reminds me of Garnet from Steven Universe or something. He's green because of the green room, but I considered making him blue like King and Queen. But of course, he does wear sunglasses because chapter bosses aren't allowed to have eyes. Regardless, in both new and old versions of the narrative, they were in charge of the television programming and broadcasting to the rest of the Dreamer Dark World, along with their best buddy, drumroll please, Tenna is the family television and Mike's co-host, a generally silent type who mostly just prefers to hang around and compliment Mike. In the original version of the AU, they didn't speak, but I thought it would be more interesting if in this version they spoke like a staticky sounding TV language that only Mike could understand. Regardless, they're still difficult to read without Mike being present. As for their design, I was originally inspired by Neonbandit again with their host character for this one. Primarily the face and the lack of voice, but I wanted him to look like less cool in this version. Although I made him a bit taller to help contrast with Mike. Other than that, I don't have much else to say about the design. It didn't change that much. I did make their designs complement each other in this version, with Mike having a green outfit and a red tie, and Tenna having a red outfit with a green tie. Lastly, the upper part of their screen used to act like a sort of eyebrow thing, but I removed that to make their expression more blank in order to make them come off as more mysterious. As for Mike and Tenna's relationship as a duo, I remember back then wanting to have the duo of Mike and Tenna narratively parallel an existing pair of characters, but I could not make up my mind on who I wanted to represent with who. either being with Chris and Toriel, Chris with Azrael, or maybe even Chris with Des. My current dynamic of them is a lot more concrete though, with Mike paralleling Toriel, being a more chill, relaxed guy now who just wants to have fun, and Tenna being Asgore, being the more upbeat and goofy member of the duo who acts more serious on camera in order to please the audience, as well as Chris, the why of which I'll go into more later, but I wanted it to appear that maybe Asgore was the parent that Chris takes after the most out of the two. Next up, we got Ray, a minor character of the chapter, a remote who acts as Mike and Tenna's #1 lackey, serving all backstage roles for him like lights, cameras, other things. His personality would be constantly anxious and overworked while trying to keep up with essentially being the only employee under Mike and Tenna. Their design actually looks pretty close to a Zapper, but that's not a surprise considering they're both based after the same long and skinny object. He runs a shop appearing at the end of the first area of the chapter. His design didn't change much in this remake, but I did decide to give him 4 arms. That was actually a character trait that was originally supposed to belong to Canon Tenna, but Toby Fox scrapped that for being difficult to animate. But on Ray, it works perfectly, allowing him to perform twice as much work for his employers. Despite being the first character I made for this AU, I don't even have a name for the secret boss. Now, you may be wondering, hey Stinko, why do they look like Clover from Undertale Yellow? Well, this is my AU and I get to do what I want! Okay. So in their redesign, I made them into a puppet, which may feel like a rehash of what Spampton already was, but for some reason, Woody is a puppet in Deltarune, so I guess we're doing puppets now. I don't have much else about them, truth be told. Fred inside me is just a formality in these sorts of things, so I had to do it. But moving on, I saved the best for last, because the most important role in the chapter, the main villain, isn't actually Mike or Tenna or any of those guys. Rather, it's Crook, originally just called Rook back in the old version of this, was a mob boss character in charge of the Shadow Guys. Their design is based on the Rook, a European species of corvid, because even back then I still liked birds, and chess theory was wildly believed at the time. And the bird just felt like it was the best interpretation of Rook, and what it could even mean as a character in a game. At the end of the game, the fun gang would rip off Crook's disguise, Scooby-Doo style, to reveal it was actually Tenna all along. That's right, I lied. Tenna's actually the main boss, who betrayed Mike for their own reasons. Now the problem is, when I had made this AU, I had decided pretty clearly that I wanted Tenna to parallel Chris, being the silent, cool, and kinda mysterious type people generally like, but is probably hiding something. But back then, I was under the belief that Chris was the knight, but they're not. We see them in the same room together. So now that we know Chris isn't the knight, but rather working as an accomplice to them, I think it still works in this remake to keep Tenna as the twist villain. Lots of people thought that this chapter would have a twist villain for some reason, mostly because I think it's cool. It still fits thematically, not to Chris being the knight this time, but rather Chris hiding a dark secret about working with the knight. And also because I can't figure out anything Tenna would do if they aren't Rook. I thought about introducing a mysterious character aside from Mike that Tenna could be working under to parallel the knight, but not every character needs a thematic parallel, and I think it would make more sense if Tenna was just receiving orders from the knight itself instead. Also, I feel like it was worth mentioning, but this chapter would have more than just 4 characters. These are just the ones I made. So that's all the characters I had designed for this, but don't click off the video yet. I'm still gonna go over what they do by covering the entire plot of the chapter, including my designs for every location and area of this Dark World. I never made any content for Chapter 4, so I tried to make changes where possible in order to keep continuity with the real Chapter 4. I'll try to bring that up where I can when discussing my version of this chapter. But before we move on, I'd like to stop everything to tell you that this video is sponsored by me. Make sure you like the video, comment, and subscribe. This is my very first video of this level of quality, and your support would mean a lot to me. I've also been told that people are more likely to subscribe if I show this graph on screen. I'm interested to see if that works. But anyway, let's get on started for real. Starting out with our plot, in the newsletters, Toby Fox described this chapter as a weird one, and because it was described that way, I apparently actually got my prediction fairly close to what we got in the final game. I saw the idea of the chapter being full of mini-games that you play and all appear later as a WarioWare-style boss battle, and thought it was a super cool concept. This idea came completely from GuiltyFlygon's Predicting Chapter 3 Based on Vibes video, so shout out to them for correctly guessing the plot of Chapter 3. The first location in my version of the game where the chapter would have opened is TV Tower, the home of Mike and Tenna. It never had a name in the original, so I figured TV Tower from the unused board 3 could fit. It's a location similar to the Card Castle or Pandora Palace from chapters 1 and 2. That's because this chapter would follow a reverse order from the main ones, but starting at the villain's main fortress and adventuring out to the more sparsely populated areas at the end of the chapter. Here, you would be introduced to Mike and Tenna. Also, would explain to them that you need to close the fountain to stop the roaring. Surprisingly, Mike is fine with this, but he encourages the group to play a few games together and have some fun before sealing the fountain. Not like they're in any rush or anything. If I wanted to line things up with Chapter 4, Susie would probably get her character development here, similar to the actual game, because she needs to learn what the Dark Worlds are some way or another. Toriel would also be here, and she would be revealed to be in Mike's relaxation area / spa being served by Tenna. She's too relaxed here to enjoy any of the shenanigans this chapter and will only remember it as a pleasant dream in the morning. At this point, things play out mostly similar to Toby's version of the chapter. The gang would record 3 movies together with Mike and Tenna, represented by the 3 minigames in this version. No game boards or sword route though, because that would just be too much content with everything else that happens later. That would be bad for pacing. I never came up with ideas of my versions of the minigames, so we can just borrow the cooking, music, and monster movies from the real game. I'm sure Toby won't mind. In between each game, you'll get to talk to Mike and Tenna, and maybe do some other things too. Once the gang finishes recording all the movies, they do the mini-boss fight against El Nino and La Nina. Rules probably wouldn't be here in any significant way in my version of the chapter. And then after that, the gang would say goodbye and head off to seal the Dark Fountain. Easy as that. Except just kidding, this is where my AU starts to differ from the real thing, because before they can leave, the Delta Warriors are interrupted by a rogue broadcast by Crook, who explains through some complicated shenanigans how they were able to kidnap Toriel, and in order to defeat them, the heroes must travel all the way to the broadcast tower at the edge of the Dark World in order to get her back. Worried for her safety, Mike would be the one to send the fun gang off to defeat Crook and save Toriel. But Mike would still stay in contact with the fun gang throughout the chapter, maybe via phone or some other form of communication. I haven't figured it out yet. Scrap Desert is the area you arrive in after leaving TV Tower. I feel like a lot of people were expecting a desert area this chapter, so this one would be in the kitchen and serve as the Dark World's industrial district, filled with large factories to make merchandise for Mike and Tenna. The Darkners who work here are actually mostly fine with their lives. They say that while work is hard, they get through it all in order to return home and watch Mike and Tenna's shows. But recently, the Shadow Guys, Crook's goons, has been terrorizing them, and it's your job to defeat them. All the traditional areas in this chapter would be pretty small, since we need to make room for the mini-games at the beginning. I have a vague idea for a mini-boss who would be like an old grumpy snail woman who oversees all the workers here, but I never made a design for her, which is why I didn't mention her before. In my old version of the chapter, this is all just like a big empty desert area, but I added buildings and factories because it felt weird having TV Tower in the middle of nowhere with nobody to broadcast to. Anyways, the further left you travel through this area, the less populated it gets, until the factories give way to just a vast desert full of sand, as well as our next area. Purple Cliffs is the less developed side of the desert, being an area comprising the stairs and upstairs hallway. In the Dark World, it forms a large mesa plateau with the signal spire at the top. It'll be the smallest of the areas, and it'll mostly consist of upwards climbing to the top, maybe using the climbing mechanic from Chapter 4. The area in my original version of the AU was basically just a more vertical section of the desert without any buildings, but I think shifting the color palette to like a more purple tone to reflect the final game would be cooler. Maybe all Dark Worlds look like this the further out to the edge you go. I want this chapter to feel like you're making an exhaustively long journey from where you started at that TV tower. This area would feature two notable sub-locations, the first being a sewer where the bathroom would be. The weird route is like a weird connection of manholes, so this will be where all the weird route foreshadowing we missed out on would be instead. At the end of the dungeon would be a cassette tape required to fight the secret boss, which would be needed to be brought to the other sub-area, a drive-in movie theater. If you've never been to one, it's basically just like a giant screen with a projector in front of a parking lot. This will be where you can watch home videos recorded by the Dreamer family, reminiscent of the tapes found in Undertale's True Lab, including something similar to the cutscene we sent at the real Chapter 3 to keep consistency. There'd be a couple other ones, but watching these would require finding cassette tapes hidden throughout the Dark Worlds, and the one found in the sewers would activate the secret boss fight. Lastly, we have the Signal Spire, where Toriel's room would be. Originally, this area was called Broadcast Tower, but I changed the name so it doesn't get confused with TV Tower, as well as make a nice railroad reference. Maybe it could also have a bright pink color palette like the area it's named after, but that might be taking the reference too far. It's a large radio tower at the top of the plateau that broadcasts Mike and Tenna's programs all across the other Dark Worlds. People like Spampton and Queen would have made use of it too in order to air their own advertisements and propaganda, but nowadays it's just mostly used by Mike. At the top of the Signal Spire, you would fight Crook, and this is the part of the chapter I talked about earlier, where it will be revealed it's actually Tenna in disguise. And now, they've stolen the movies you made with Mike at the beginning of the game to use as their attack, similar to how the real Chapter 3 did it. But, seeing the movies would remind Tenna that you all had fun together back at the beginning of the chapter, and maybe that's more important than whatever the knight wanted them to do. I don't have anywhere else to put this in the video, but you could rematch Mike and Tenna together as a duo battle in the dojo later. After being defeated, Tenna would explain through Mike's help translating that they were tasked by the knight to keep the Dark Fountain open as long as possible, and if they didn't do that, the knight said they would be in big trouble. Keeping fountains sustained for long periods of time can be dangerous, however, not only because a lightener could fall through, but also because the Dark World itself could become unstable after being left open too long. I never wrote a proper ending to the chapter originally, because I didn't know how it would play into the rest of Deltarune as a whole, but that doesn't really matter since we're changing things to line up with Chapter 4. So, wrapping things up, Mike and Tenna would head back to TV Tower and apologize for holding things up. They would return Toriel. By the way, if Toriel needs to be asleep at the end of the chapter, we can say that Rook put her out of some knockout gas or something. And Mike and Tenna would encourage the gang to seal the fountain as quickly as possible. Unless you want to go back and get any recruits you missed, in which case go ahead, we got all the time in the world. But before they could give the heroes a proper goodbye, the Roaring Knight swoops in and roaring knights all over the place, killing Tenna for betraying him, maybe kidnaps Undyne or something along the way, and sets off the events of Chapter 4. Because like I said, I never designed my own version of Chapter 4, so I gotta keep continuity. Sorry Tenna, the prophecy says so. Originally, it was part of my plan to have the fountain itself located at Signal Spire, and you'd get to see Toriel's room when you exit the Dark World, but I'm not sure how I could incorporate that with Chapter 4. I was also going to have Napstablook be the police officer who shows up at one point, but I think Undyne might be a bit more important. There might be some other details I left out in this version of the story that would be important to have, but I'm fine with a couple mistakes. This was of course made with no knowledge of Chapter 4 or plan of me to make my own Chapter 4 at all, so I think I did okay at remaking it to fit with the modern narrative. So there you go. That's what I thought Chapter 3 was going to be before it came out. Please let me know what you thought of these characters and their redesigns. Do I think it should have gotten this instead of the real Chapter 3? No, Toby Fox is way better at this than me. This is just my silly little take back when we thought every chapter was going to be the exact same as chapter 2. Like I said before, this is my first high-quality, full-length video. This has been a massive undertaking for me compared to my usual content. But if you like this, please let me know, and I might make more videos like this. Maybe I can talk about some of my original OCs you might know about if you follow me on my other socials. The characters I made for this video should probably be on my toy house sometime soon after this video comes up, so make sure to check them out there. I'll leave a link in the description, as well as links to everyone else I mentioned in this video. And with that, have a good day! Bye!